So we are now heading into an international break, but the Championship didn't disappoint this weekend. We've got loads of talking points to go through in both the Championship and the FA Cup as well. As always, I want to get your take on everything going on in the league in the comments down below. Stick around over the international break as well, because we've got loads of content coming out over these next couple of weeks. But without any further ado, let's jump in. And starting out at Bloomfield Road for Blackpool 1, Coventry 4. Now 9 unbeaten for this Coventry side, who have well and truly kept their playoff hopes alive with a thumping victory in this one. We mentioned the slight jeopardy going into this game because of the 6-1 that Blackpool handed out to QPR last time. And you know what? It was a fairly positive start from Blackpool in this game. Gyökeres does really well for the Coventry goal to set up Sheff, but Blackpool get back into it via Yates from the penalty spot, and they did have a good chance to go in at half-time 2-1 up. Instead, it's Coventry who get that goal thanks to a Nelson own goal, and in the second half their quality just showed. Once again, the same weaknesses popping up with Blackpool, especially when it comes to defending set-piece situations. 2 of the goals Coventry scored in this one coming from those areas. It's been a weakness of theirs all season, and a good victory for Coventry on the road there. For Blackpool, back to the drawing board over this international break, and coming back straight after it, there are a couple of huge fixtures for them which will be season defining. First one up against North End, which doesn't need to be hyped up. Straight after that, they're back at home for a home fixture against Cardiff, which also doesn't need bigging up for the situation they're currently in. So those 2 fixtures that Blackpool return from the international break from will probably determine whether they go up or down. You know, if lose both those matches, I think it's lights out. After that, to the Riverside for Middlesbrough 4, Preston 0. I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit optimistic coming into this one. Don't think that Middlesbrough were quite at their best in midweek. Preston were on a really good unbeaten run coming into this game, but as soon as the 2 team sheets came in, I was suddenly, not feeling as great about our chances. Losing Ched Evans was always going to be a massive blow. I think the partnership that him and Cannon have struck up between each other has been pivotal during this unbeaten run, and Middlesbrough just wiped the floor with us in this game. They really showed levels in the Championship in this one. We were only 1-0 down at half-time, but was lucky not to be 2 or 3. We were really hanging on in there, and then in the second half, they just went ahead and asserted their dominance even more. It was a dagger through the heart that it was Cameron Archer making all the difference in this one. An assist in the first half, 2 goals in the second. Took both goals absolutely brilliantly, by the way. The first one shrugging off Bambo Diaby, and then you know, going around Story before firing it in the second one from outside the box, and then Marcus Forss putting the cherry on the top, making it 4. I believe for Cameron Archer now, he's averaging a goal contribution in the league for Middlesbrough every 94 minutes or so, which is absolutely outstanding, you know, considering the goals that Akbom is continuing to chip in with as well. And yeah, if Middlesbrough can be like that as soon as the international break is over for the remainder of the season, there's every chance that they do go on and catch up to the Blades. We mentioned how big this weekend would be in terms of a potential momentum swinger because Sheffield United have been in FA Cup action, so the fact that they have closed the gap, albeit with Sheffield United having the game in hand, they've played with such a swagger and ferocity in the final third that, yeah, they were well deserving of that. And the red card for Bambo Diaby is just another blow for Preston, really, going into that Blackpool game after the international break. Then to the den for Millwall against Huddersfield. Now, I'll hold my hands up, I did not see this result coming. If I had to bank on one result this weekend, it was probably going to be Millwall beating Huddersfield, and they had so much going their way in this one. 70% possession, 18 shots in the end. It looked like it was only going to be a matter of time before Millwall finally did get that goal, and I think as soon as they, you know, potentially did get that first goal, the floodgates perhaps would have opened. But Huddersfield stood strong, and fair play to them. It was a valiant performance on the road, snatching that goal somewhat against the run of play. Ball coming in from the left hand side, Ward gets on the end of it, and from that point onwards they're able to frustrate Millwall and hold out for all 3 points. And how big could that result be come the end of the season? I think it's now Huddersfield who have done the double over Millwall this season, so those 6 points could turn out to be pivotal for them. And what goes and only really adds to the drama at the bottom of the table is the fact that that Cardiff against Rotherham game ended up being postponed. So Huddersfield clawing back some real ground on the teams above them. 3 points the gap currently sits at. Of course, there is that game in hand for Cardiff and Rotherham to go ahead and play out, but yeah, that could be massive. And going into the international break off the back of a draw and a win, it's not bad for Huddersfield. Certainly some signs of life all of a sudden. QPR against Birmingham. We spoke in the preview about how important the first goal in this game was going to be, and for QPR to give up a chance after just a couple of minutes to Birmingham for Chong to latch onto. They were always going to play on that. We were never expecting the best game of football between these two, given the situation and the poor run of form relatively that they were both on coming into this game. But Birmingham were able to play on that. The confidence of this QPR squad is clearly on the floor at the moment, and after conceding an early goal as they did, yeah, there was little chance of them getting back into it. There was an improvement in the second half, but I think by that point Birmingham had sort of sat off and invited the QPR pressure, and ultimately they couldn't get anything over the line. What really worries me about this QPR squad at the moment, on top of the dismal run of form, is their running at the end of the season is really quite difficult, especially compared to some of the other clubs in and around them. After the international break, they return with games against Wigan and Preston, and then their last 6 games in particular are looking really difficult. They've got games against West Brom, Coventry, Norwich, Burnley, Stoke and Bristol City. No easy games in there for QPR in their final 6, and yeah, if they don't return to action with something in those games against Wigan and Preston, I'm really going to be fearing for them. Reading against Hull, this one ended all square. I think from a Reading perspective, it was important that they at least stop the losing run going into this international break. It seems as if over this next week, heading into the international break, we will get a little bit more clarity on their point deduction situation, and if it is the -6 points, which we are expecting, that will plummet them right down into the relegation battle. If we take away 6 points from where they currently stand in the Championship, they'll be reduced down to 39, the same amount of points as Cardiff have right now, and obviously 3 points more than Huddersfield. And given their general form that Reading have been on in the calendar year of 2023, yeah, they are well within this relegation battle right now if that one does come off. From a Hull City perspective, bit of a frustrating game really. They got themselves into that leading position, bit of a scrappy goal to concede in the end. From a Reading perspective, if you do get the ball in and around the box for someone like Andy Carroll, he will cause a little bit of mayhem. And in the second half, Hull had more of the ball, more chances, but no real endeavour and quality to go and kill this off, which was a frustrating one from their part, really. But yeah, for Reading, it seems like we'll know more about their situation over this next week or so. And it's time to get your conspiracy theories out about this one. Rotherham against Cardiff ended up being postponed, and a real kick in the teeth, I think, for Cardiff especially, because they started out this game really quite positively. They were by far and away the better team in this one, as Rotherham hadn't really showed up, and now that this game did get abandoned, they'll get a second crack at it. And such an important match as well in the relegation battle between these two sides. In terms of what actually went on, I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous, the amount of rain that did fall in such a short period of time. And I think that 2 things can be true here. One, was the playing surface ever going to be playable in the situation that, that much rain fell and the resources that Rotherham had available to them? Probably not, but on the flip side of that, could Rotherham, their ground staff and everything, have done a little bit more to try and get the game back on? Probably as well. It was all a little bit of a messy situation. I'd be fascinated to see how the EFL does respond to this, in terms of how the rearranged match goes ahead and takes place and things like that. Possible sanctions on either side or anything like that. It will be fascinating to see. But yeah, some of the videos that have come out since have been eye-opening to say the least, with ground staff and things like that. But generally speaking, the amount of rainfall that fell and the quality of the pitch, some of the videos from how the ball was just getting completely stuck up, it would have been a massive hazard if that game was allowed to go on. Stoke against Norwich ended all level in the end, goalless draw between these two. I was back in Stoke for all 3 points, and it would have been a victory had it not been for the colossal performance of Angus Gunn in net for Norwich. Stoke by far and away the better team in this one, plenty of openings, opportunities. Norwich a few shaky moments at the back where they gave up some decent chances to Stoke, but nothing could fall for them in the final third. What does keep Norwich's top 6 hopes alive is the fact that Millwall had that quite unlikely slip against Huddersfield in the end, meaning that going into this international break, there's only a 3-point gap between Norwich and Millwall. And considering that Norwich winless over their last 3 matches, where they have really dropped the ball, lost quite a bit of momentum and points, they're still well within the playoff hunt. And if they do manage to regroup over this international break and really hit things as soon as they come back, then they do still stand the chance of a top 6 finish. There are some pretty tough matches coming up for Norwich, it has to be said. coming back after the international break with games against Sheffield United and Blackburn, two massive games there which could be quite season defining. In terms of Stoke, I think there's a lot more positivity around there at the moment. Good unbeaten run they're going into this international break on now, and this one really should have been all 3 points. There was quite a bit of controversy at Sunderland this weekend as well. Their game against Luton playing out as a 1-1 draw. I think I was fancying Luton for this game. They got themselves into that leading position, really well taken set piece routine, and from that point onwards Sunderland did react quite well actually, going after that equaliser, but the way in which that came around will have Luton fans quite frustrated, since Sunderland fans on social media admitting, you know, after the game it just wasn't a penalty, was it? Really soft one, but after waiting quite some time it seemed, the referee did decide to give it. Diallo sticks that one away, and ultimately this one finishes 1-1. On the balance of the full game, a draw was probably a fair result, but given the way that equaliser came around with the cheap penalty, Luton fans will be really quite frustrated with how that one came around. But you know, on the flip side, you know, I'm sure Sunderland have had plenty of you know, those sort of decisions that have gone against them this season. So frustrating one there for Luton on the road to have not picked up all 3 points, but like I say, points seems like a fair result on the balance of the game. Watford against Wigan ended as a 1-1 draw, and this has been the real frustration with Watford all season, them failing to build up a little bit of momentum after the positive performance from last time. They were the favourites coming into this one, but ultimately being pinned back by Wigan. It was a good start from Watford. João Pedro probably should have given them the lead quite early on when he rounded the keeper, only to put that one into the side netting, but they did go into half-time with that 1-goal lead. Nice finish from Keenan Davis with Pedro setting him up, but Wigan did spring back into this game. Not had that much firepower in this side this season, but they did manage to come up with a little bit of quality. Nice balling from Lang, McLean making it with the header, and well finished to make it 1-1. Ultimately that was how this game finished. Considering Watford have had those 3 games against QPR, Birmingham and Wigan, to have only come out of those 3 quite winnable matches with 4 points, I don't think is the greatest return in the world, ultimately for what Wilder was probably hoping to have in terms of an immediate impact in at the club. In terms of Wigan and where they stand right now, I mean, it's a testament to the players that they showed up and put in that sort of performance, considering they hadn't been paid coming into this game. As things stand, they're 5 points off safety. But if they do get this 3-point deduction, which hopefully we'll know more about over this next week, over the international break, it really leaves them with, I think, too much ground to make up. And even without that point deduction, I think it would be asking a lot from this point. And if there was one fan base that really needed a win before the international break, it was Swansea, and they finally got that 3 points over the line, beating Bristol City. And to be fair, coming into this one, we had mentioned some improvements in Swansea's general play in terms of creating more chances, but being on the receiving end of, you know, some individual mistakes which ultimately cost them over their last couple of matches, and they finally managed to turn those sort of improved performances and creating more chances into 3 points, and that's been the major problem that Swansea fans have been having recently. But yeah, by far and away I think the better side in this one. It was a richly deserved 3 points for Swansea, 2 well taken goals. From a Bristol City perspective, a little bit of a disappointing one. Just feels like they're sort of fizzling out right now, and dare I say it, maybe one of those sides that is edging towards the beach, like I think a few of them are in that mid-table part of the table, and will sort of dust themselves off and go again after the international break, but ultimately with not that much to play for. Before we do wrap up today's video, we also had some FA Cup action, which we will briefly touch on as well. Man City beating Burnley 6-0. I think all Burnley fans knew it was going to be a bit of a backs up against the wall sort of job. And to be fair to Burnley, in the early stages of this game, did go toe-to-toe with Man City and had some decent opportunities to go ahead. I think Burnley fans knew that Company wasn't going to go to the Etihad and just look to sit back. They were going to look to play their own brand of football, but ultimately getting picked apart by Man City. And I mean, when you've got Erling Haaland up against you, there's not that much you can do. And ultimately, I think Burnley got a bit of a taste of their own medicine in this one, because Man City did to Burnley what Burnley have been doing to the rest of the Championship all season, really. And this sort of shows, I suppose, how wide the gap is between the top of the Premier League and the top of the Championship, because Burnley have been blowing teams away as Man City did in this one, and City, I mean, didn't have to break a sweat in that second half and were absolutely fantastic. And in our old championship tie, it was Sheffield United progressing through to the semi-finals after a brilliant cup tie, I have to admit. 3-2 in the end. It had a little bit of everything. We mentioned in the preview to this one how important the first goal might have been, and when Blackburn went one ahead, I really thought they might have had this one in the bag, but Sheffield United got back into it before Blackburn then re-established their lead. And in hindsight, the subs Blackburn made in the second half, looking to hold on to that 2-1 lead, probably didn't work out the best in their favour. McBurney gets them back into it, and then Doyle with a goal worthy of winning any FA Cup tie, really, to go ahead and send Sheffield United through to Wembley. Will be interesting to see how that impacts the automatic promotion race in the Championship. I believe the weekend that Sheffield United will be playing at Wembley in the FA Cup semi-final, they would have been playing Huddersfield in the Championship, so that game will have to be postponed and moved to another midweek fixture. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the fixture list then compels in terms of Middlesbrough maybe catching up to Sheffield United and the Blades having games in hand and things like that. But yeah, the Blades are loving life at the moment, no doubt about that. A trip to Wembley this season with a potential promotion to come as well. What's not to love? But guys, there we have it. That will now wrap it up for today's video. If you did go and enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do stick around and subscribe for some regular Championship content. We are now heading into an international break, but the Championship content isn't stopping there. We've got loads coming out on the channel over these next couple of weeks, so make sure to go ahead and stay tuned for that. Apart from that, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.